Well, welcome to this week's Thinker Growth Workshop, and it may be just me this week. Jason is out due to family issues that he could not move in his schedule. Naomi is also not available today, and we may be joined by Ryan, but that remains to be determined. And in the meantime, I had a topic come across my radar. It's been a topic for me. It's a topic I'm seeing in others. It's a topic Jason and I have waxed on for many, many moons now. And it's the topic of playing small. So this week's episode, that's what it's about, playing small. It's a huge problem for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially if you are in our target market for the Thinker Growth community, which I've coined a little rhyming phrase here to describe. If you are an ideal person for the Thinker Growth community, for the coaching programs, the incubators, accelerators that we are putting together for clients, then it's very likely that you are a first sale to first scale type of business owner. Isn't that cute how that rhymes? First sale to first scale. Think about it, right? You're trying to launch a business, and what's more motivating than that very first sale you make? You actually sold something. Somebody actually valued what you did and put down their money and said, here you are. Help me solve this problem. Or you're all the way ahead to first scale. You've got, you're making sales pretty regularly, but something's got to shift because, you're just like, you're making sales, you're getting stressed out. You don't have the organizational capacity. You don't have the business acumen, as it were, to drive it to the next level and multiply the impact that it makes on your community, on your organization, and on you and your family. So first sale to first scale, a huge roadblock is playing small. And playing small, right? I mean, if you think about it, there's so many analogies, sports analogies that you could throw into this. Politicians, right? There's running for dog catcher, and then there's running for president. And I think probably both of those are important. Just like playing on a team in a rec league is important, right? It's important, but the amount of energy, concentration, thought, and diligence you put towards that is going to be different than if you're playing in the major leagues and you're trying to demonstrate to a team that it's worth their while and worth their money and worth their investment in drafting you. And so playing small in business, basically I nailed it down just before we started. I was thinking, what does this look like for me? Or what has it looked like for me? And then would you relate to these? I guess is the open question I'm going to put towards the audience, and you're free to feed back on it or just take it and say, yep, that's me, and then run with it and say, I've got to change that. But I'll tell you the personal story for me. And actually, this is pretty new. This is not but a few months ago that I was thinking, probably one of the more effective ways that I have ingratiated myself with an audience in the past few years has been to do public speaking. And so there's a story in my book, which I'll have to put a smile on Jason's face here and do a free shameless self-plug, right? Buy my book, Influencer Networking Secrets. You can see it right here if you're watching on the video. But there in it, I tell the story of how this things just began to snowball for me in a good way. And Ryan is joining us. He's coming online here in just a few seconds, but I'll tell this quick story. Things really began to snowball for me one day when I was at a business trade show, and I put myself out there. The topic had come up among the vendors of public speaking. And I said to myself, well, we went around, there was probably about a dozen of us gathered in a circle, and one by one, each and every one of them said, I hate public speaking. And then it came to me, and I said, well, I like public speaking. I'm open to it. And the lady next to me um, put her hand on my wrist, and she was the organizer of the event. And she said, um, great, you can take over the raffle prizes for me. And so that led to me becoming a MC for the local Miss America pageant. It led to me becoming visible and influential with a couple of different nonprofits and businesses that supported them in the community. And so I've had this history of doing quite well when I get on a stage in front of people and speak. And I thought to myself, that would be a great way to do it. Well, Jason challenged me on that. And Rye, I see you now. You're on the camera and all that. I'm just telling a story here to sort of set the table for talking about playing small. So Jason challenged me on this, and because I told him I'm thinking about doing public speaking and going to faith-based groups and all that, and seeing if if there's any synergies there to be had with business leaders. And when I told him what I was thinking of presenting on, he said, "I'm not impressed," right? In his classical Jason manner. Well, why should I care? And he was right, because what I was talking about was doing a presentation on the importance of editing, which, yes, that's important, but I mean, the millions of people do that. What's so special? Why should anybody pay attention to me? And he was right. And he said, no, I want something that I can't get anywhere else. Right. I want to know why that's so important to you. I want you to dig back into your story and tell me where this came from. And so I attempted to do that, but I was really struggling with it. And then, as he listened more and more, he said, I think the problem is you're reserved. You're reserved. You're afraid of telling, telling telling a story, and and letting people experience that side of you. Now, this is an interesting sort of challenge, because I don't think of myself as an invulnerable fortress. I live very openly and vulnerably. I just wasn't connecting it to marketing myself to an audience. So it was very easy for me to access the stories that would shed light on why I'm still reserved, and therefore why I edit myself, I edit others so well. And I said, well, shoot, I know exactly why I'm reserved. It goes straight back to middle school. It goes back to the time when I had a middle school class, probably had 30 or 40 people who I, regularly associated with. And in 24 hours, it had gone from 30 or 40 to 2, because of a couple of bad decisions I made, and the way people just took that and ran with it and slandered and badmouthed me and all that. So, but I just couldn't access that. It didn't occur to me. I didn't think people wanted to hear about it. I didn't know that the kind of power it had. So, Rye, as you now join into the conversation, I've got about 3 key things here that I can list from my own personal experience that might help the audience determine whether or not they are playing small. But I've been babbling on here. Wasn't sure if you were going to be able to make it on or not. So I was prepared to do a solo episode. Now I want to, take a little break, take a sip of coffee, and hear about how this topic struck you coming into the meeting and what's immediately on your mind.
Right. So you can hear me okay, right? Okay. So when you say talking about small ball or playing small ball, can you kind of walk through like what exactly that is?
Yeah. So in the intro, what I was saying was, good analogy is you can play on a local rec team, or you can play in a major league, professional sports team. Neither one is better than the other, but there's a different level of commitment, consistency, energy, diligence that you got to show for one versus the other.
Mhm.
Right. And in one case, you can be pretty lackluster and still get playing time. In the other, they're not letting you anywhere near it, you know? Um, and it's just, and in politics, same thing, right? You could run for dog catcher, and that's a pretty easy job to have, right? Or you could run for president, and that's a very, very, very hard job to get and to keep. And you only get it for a certain amount of time. But while you're in that, like the eyes of the entire world are focused on you,
Yeah.
and it carries with it a whole bunch of responsibilities that dog catcher just frankly doesn't. So I hope that's a good lead in for you. Does that help you with what you're trying to get towards?
Kind of. Yeah, it kind of does. Years ago, when I was 20, I lived in Miami, and when I first arrived there, I got this job walking door to door and selling like coupon books and stuff. One thing that stuck with me in our regular meetings that we had, it was like there was like meetings in the morning where all of us salespeople, guys, would come, and in that meeting we get all pumped up by our leaders and things like that, just to get us out there to go out in the field and knock on doors. And one point that one of the leaders made that was really that stuck me to this day, because I was 20 years old. That was 23 years ago. Was do you want to be king of the pond or prince of the ocean?
Hmm.
Mhm. And when he described to us what the difference was, I understood where he was coming from in our situation, striving for better and like not being hindered by like boundaries that were either created for you or created by you. Um, but when I look at small ball now, I think about my favorite basketball team, the Warriors. They've been known for playing small ball. Like they have a lot of smaller guys on the court versus like bigger like centers or guards or things like that. And as we know, the Warriors are a world class team, not multi championship level team. So I think when I think about those two examples and I think about my business, I think currently what I'm looking to achieve is really creating my market. And if that means playing small ball along with, having people around me get to know who I am and kind of building my following on a grassroots level, I'm good with that. Like, I think that's great because with the budget that I am currently flexing for this project, playing a small ball is the way to go. But there are plenty of companies out there when they come out the gate, they come out swinging, and they're looking to dominate the world right away. But I think in my situation now, I think it's important to kind of stay grounded while we're building, and then kind of take that foundation that we created, and then go bigger, scale up, as it
Mhm.
were. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Somewhat. But you see the difference in what I hear from you there is you're playing commensurate with the level you're at, which is totally good. What Jason and I were getting as we stumbled towards this topic is the thinking. And so you don't strike me as though you're playing small and thinking small, right?
Mhm.
You're thinking, let's play at the level we're at and not try to be something we're not. That's healthy. Um, and we're talking more about let's not even play at the level we could play, and let's not try to be who we are, right?
Mhm.
And let's be what we think everybody wants us to be, so that we don't get, you know, we can't possibly be held up to criticism or have our weaknesses pointed out, or have again, going back to previous episodes, right? We've talked about haters
Mhm.
and the people who badmouth you online. So it does come back in a sense, I think, to that just terror of being judged that we've discussed on previous episodes. And I think um so yeah, that in an indirect way, what you're doing there is I think you're on a really good path there, because you are respecting the limitations of where you currently are, but you're not settling for them. Versus a lot of business owners have a too much respect for limitations that in many cases are not even on them. And that was what was Jason was poking at with me. He was saying, you don't even want to step into the mantle that you do carry, never mind the one that you don't. Right.
Right.
So,
I think
um,
I think someone who another example of like someone who played small ball until it was their time to shine, I guess, is so I've been watching a lot of sports lately, and I'm from San Francisco. So if you're following football and you follow San Francisco and you think about the new head quarterback, Brock Purdy. If you're not familiar with Brock Purdy, then his story is he was always smaller and didn't take the most easiest or most extravagant route in his football career as a quarterback, but he
mhm,
always knew that he wanted to be a quarterback, and he always knew that that was the position that he was going to play and win at. When it came to the draft, the NFL draft, if you're not familiar with the draft, then you get selected into football teams in different stages, right? You
mhm,
get the first pick all the way down to the last pick. Brock Purdy that year that he got drafted into the NFL was picked dead last,
mm,
dead last out of all the players that could have come out of college, went straight to the 49ers. And then on top of that, um, was the third string quarterback for probably like about a year and a half, 2 years. And if you're following the Niners through that time, they went through a lot of turmoil with regards to the health of their team. Both their quarterbacks that year, their starting quarterback and their second string quarterback, both became injured last year. Brock Purdy stepped in the last half of the season, and we're 5 games deep in now this year, and he's been undefeated.
mm,
Like he hasn't lost a game, and his numbers are like number one throughout
mhm,
the league as a quarterback. And so I think to have that type of mentality that you will succeed, um, better or otherwise. You don't have to be better. You don't even have to be like the same size as these other football players. Brock Purdy himself is like a regular guy. He's like 6 feet tall and has a roommate. Like
mhm,
he's not even making like star quarterback money right now. But he knew that as soon as he was going to get his chance, he was going to make an impact. And throughout his whole football life, his whole football career from elementary school till now, he was always seen as an underdog.
yeah,
And I think it's good to keep that mentality about yourself because it just keeps you hungry. Like it keeps you enthused and wanting more. And I myself want to stay at that underdog level until it's time to really go out and scale to a grander place. And
mm,
I think when we talk about playing small ball versus the otherwise, then I think to the point you made earlier, it's okay. It's good to have that mentality of like, no, not the mentality. It's good to position yourself in your lane for however long it's going to take you until you see an opening or an opportunity to kind of break out with the world see you. And I think it's
mhm,
important to do that because at the beginning and stay scrappy because again, you can go out the gate with a ton of resources as a business owner and still fail.
mhm,
How many brands have we seen out there that were backed by like large entities or investors? Everything from like, you know, tech apps or anything like that to, products that you find online or anything like that. People have failed. It doesn't matter at what level they are. So I think it's really important to like keep that lane in your lane mentality for a little while, but playing playing small ball for the moment until you build a good foundation, uh, and then when you have that foundation, really transitioning that into something that's going to be a grand and a lot more, I guess.
That does sort of, I mean, it's early to tell, but the story you told there of Brock Purdy sort of rings back to Tom Brady, right? Sitting there as the backbencher in the Patriots, Drew Bledsoe's in front of him. No way they're going to let him play, right? Until Bledsoe goes down. Now they have no choice. It turns out they were wasting their time. Um,
Hmm.
and now I don't know if he like I haven't looked enough into his story to know if he held a similar mentality, and there's plenty since then to suggest that whatever he held up until that point changed when he started winning back-to-back Super Bowls and going, you know, pretty much like a juggernaut for the rest of his career. But the point is, like, until that moment when Bledsoe went down, nobody knew or cared who he was, and he got passed over numerous times in the NFL draft. The Patriots picked him up, and to this day, I don't know that the Patriots really knew what they were getting. Like,
The
I
Niners
think,
definitely didn't. The
yeah,
49ers definitely didn't know.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. Um, so uh, I've got a couple more things to throw on the fire here. Just some stuff from over the weekend because I was in Nashville this past weekend for a retreat with my online mastermind, and a couple things came up that I want to use to steer into these. I've sort of put a short list here of things that I think if this is true of me, it's probably true of you, and it looks different. True of you, I say, I mean the audience, probably for you as well, Ryan, in some capacity. But there were a couple stories that came up. Number one, we have so this is a group of close to 150 guys. It's broken down into groups of 8 to 10 guys each, like little platoons and all that. And one of the guys in our group was he showed up. He was kind of quieter than usual. And when I talked to him, he admitted that things were not going well for him, and he's trying to launch a brand new product. And he's had a lot of support from several of the guys in our group in terms of putting together basic marketing channel stuff so that he can go out there and pitch it. And now he's like frozen in space, deer in the headlights, can't move forward, can't go back. And um and as we dug into it, right, what we figured out was um he has everything he needs. He's just not executing. In terms of like a minimum viable product. Of course you can always improve it, but at some point you have to stop trying to improve it and just go out there and sell it, right? And see if people will go for it. And if they don't, okay, back to the drawing board. But if they do, okay, then you start improving it. So we're trying to talk him through this. And a couple of the guys picked up on it pretty quick. They said, this is not an issue of not having time or not having energy. This is an issue of you're stuck, you're scared, you're um, something deep inside you is telling you hold back when you should be moving forward. And I mean, this is what we do in this mastermind, right? It's some of the most beautiful moments. Um, it doesn't feel very beautiful if you're the person they're doing it to, but I've been both, right? I've been the guy, right there in the middle. Um, and I've also been the guy dogpiling in a good way from the outside and saying, no, we're not letting you get away with this. We're not letting you lie to yourself. Right. Um, so there was this beautiful um, scenery of us doing our job, right? One more time of pushing a brother off of the start line, right? Dragging him across the finish line. He's not even started yet, right? And I filed that one away. Another conversation was this time I was the goldfish, right? With everybody standing around the bowl. We do this thing called duct tape sessions, and it's where one member agrees to zip their lips and let all the other members tell them there's stuff that they affirm and identify. Yep, you're really, really good at this. And then there's what we call blind spots and kryptonite. And so the blind spots are things we don't even see about ourselves, that could usually sabotage or trip us up or catch us off guard. And then the kryptonite is stuff that we just do that we this has got to stop, dude. If you keep doing this, you're gonna hurt yourself, right? So, um, one of the guys said to me, because I'm the guy in the middle now, he said, um, "You're not doing something that you should be doing." And that's all I can tell you. He didn't name anything. He didn't try to tell me specific industry or specific job. He just said, "I think there's something that you um, could do and do so well, and you're not doing it because you're afraid, just because you don't even know it's on your radar. Like you can't see yourself and all of that." And I'm like, well, that's why I wanted to do this session, because that's the hardest thing to do, is to see things about myself that that everybody else is like, come on, do something with that. So, so anyway, then, Jason and I were talking yesterday, and he was mentioning playing small. I think it might be better worded as thinking small, because again, like you made an excellent distinction at the outset. You can play small in a very healthy way, because one of the easiest things to see through is a guy who thinks he's famous when he isn't. A guy who thinks he's a global brand when he's got, just two or three customers, right?
Yeah.
Anybody can see through that. But the guy who goes the opposite direction and says, I am never going to be a global brand. In fact, I'm not even going to be a local brand. I'm probably just going to have to give away my stuff for free, because I'm not worthy. I don't deserve it. I'm scum, right? For
Mm.
asking for money, in exchange for the value that I have. And, so I've got I've got two or three things I want to list out for the audience as data points that they can reference. And of course, if you've got something to throw on the fire there too, Ryan, I would love to hear it. But react to those stories. What are you hearing, and what's coming up for you?
The last thing I heard was most interesting. Shoot, I forgot it was something about how playing. Oh, just now when you mentioned about like that person who doesn't feel worthy to ask for money or sell the product. I mean, there are often instances where you can't give away your product, where people are out there, they can't even like give away their product for free to people. Like no one wants it. And I think a lot of that has to do with not only how you feel the value of your product is, but your value as the business, as the entrepreneur behind it. It's really important to find value in whatever you're selling, whether it be a service or a product. And when you have that value, someone's going to buy it. And so I think it's really important for entrepreneurs when they're devising or coming up with ideas on like their next move or their next business, or if it's their first business. Like, I think that what's really important is to like ask yourself, like, what problem am I solving with this? Or is there a problem behind this product or the service I'm trying to sell out in the world? Because to your point, like if you're selling something just to be making money and you're not inherently trying to im- better your community one way or another, then I don't think that anyone else will see value. And yeah, you can't give it away for free.
Hmm.
Uh, I think there's another point too, and Jason and I were talking about this last session was, having a supportive group around you to help you, to push you over that starting point, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
I think more often than not, there are plenty of entrepreneurs who are out there who uh, kind of work in a silo, and that's not healthy. And it's really difficult to see your blind spots, to your point, if you don't have people around you to see them for you. I think you made some major points. So just kind of like digesting those, a couple of those points for the audience there.
I think what I think this is hard. The more abstract you get about the value, or the more abstract your value is, the harder this is to see. Like if if I was selling the service of mopping floors, well, everybody needs floors mopped, right? If I'm selling the service of internet, you know, ISP or something like that, everybody and their mother needs internet. If I'm selling, just handyman, like everybody needs that, but not all of us are doing that, and so this becomes increasingly more difficult um, to nail down and say. It's one thing when everybody needs it. It's another thing and it's one thing when nobody needs it, right? So if you've got those two, right, it's a simple equation, but most of us are somewhere on the spectrum of that, right?
Mhm.
Some of us are working with stuff that's just very rote and basic, and it boils down to how well we do of marketing and presenting and fulfilling that service or that product. Others of us have a bit of a steeper curve because we're actually working to market a service that not everybody needs, but it's not nobody either. Some people do need it. In fact, even more than the product or the service itself is they need a particular person to work with to facilitate that.
Mhm.
And the more you get into the intangibles, the spiritual, the the stuff that is trickier to quantify or measure or put our hands on. Say this is a real substance. This is a real service, right? I can feel it. I can touch it. I can taste it. Whatever. Uh, the more the more challenging it is to A, believe that you have that value, and then B, communicate it. And there's a whole bunch of um, variables that go along with that as well, because you also have to know by extension who this is not for, and you have to be able to spot the person who it's not for coming to you and saying, "I want to buy it." You have to be able to tell them, "No, you don't." Right?
So, speaking of value and giving away things for free, I have another story.
Hmm.
So the other week, my dog is dying for attention. Um, the other week, I thought about potentially doing something in like real estate marketing,
Hmm.
right? And I have a couple friends in real estate. And initially, I was thinking about editing real estate videos, and then I got turned on to the idea of doing marketing for real estate agents, like how to get them out in the world more.
Hmm.
And I had a friend who admitted to me that they needed to do more of that. Family guy, two kids, growing family, wife also works. So they split time with the chores or whatever and take care of the kids. So I talked about my idea and he was like, you know what, I could use some help with that. And I was like, cool. So we met and we talked and we came up with some things and they had a couple meetings. And then eventually he hit me up and said, I'm caught up with a number of other responsibilities right now, and I can't follow through on some of the things that you're asking me to do. And I'll let you know when I can do it. And I was like, okay, no problem. N- Now had now I wonder what I could have done to keep this person committed, right? And have them move on to the next step. And what I realized was that this person that I was trying to work with didn't have any skin in the game whatsoever.
Mm.
No investment other than, yeah, I need to do this. Right. So when we talk about playing small ball and talking about value, your time is money, and the skills and even the assistance that you provide people, like in my case, helping my friend trying to get their social media up or something like that,
Hmm.
all provides value. It needs to be treated like there's value to it. And the most communicable way to understand intrinsic value in a transaction is by exchanging resources, spending
Hmm.
money.
Hmm.
I can tell you that if I had my friend or if I had this person I was working with, my friend, I guess, pay me, I don't know, a few $100s to help them with this, including all the services and offering all the services that I offered him at the time. And he paid me that money. Let's say I sold him on it. Then Lord, God knows that assuming that the resources changed hands and things like that, that person would be more committed to working with me because they've already spent the money to do it.
And you have
So when we talk, Mhm.
and you have put forward through insisting on resources exchanging hands. You have said, um,
This is our commitment.
I paid
You
a
pay me.
price to know how to do this. Therefore, you must pay a price to receive it done for you.
Exactly. Because at that moment when I'm working with him, I ain't going to say, I likely will say I didn't know what I was doing. We were just coming up with some ideas to help him look better online. Now, had I been like, okay, I can help you with this, and I like came up with some little plan for him, which I did, and was like, okay, so assuming that we're moving forward with this, if we're, since we're doing this is how much it's going to cost for me to work with you. Boom. And at that point, that person could have, once I made that offer to them, they could do two things: accept the offer, pay me, move forward, and then we'll move forward with the project, or not, or not buy the not pay me and not move forward. But at least that person would have a choice and now could figure out which way we're moving. Right.
And
So when you talk
you've
about value,
basically you've that's the litmus test, right? To see how serious that person is. If they're serious, they'll
exactly,
buy it, and if they're not, they won't.
exactly. If it was for them, to your point, if this is something that the person who wants to buy this is qualified for, then we'll sell it to them. We'll provide the service we'll get this project going. So what I learned from that experience is that if you're offering a service of any sort of value to someone and you're really, and, and you're looking to start a business, well, if you're offering any sort of service to someone and there's any sort of value to it, the only way the other person's going to see that value is if you put a price tag on it.
Hmm. Yep.
Right. And depending on how valuable it is, depends on a couple things, but a lot of it's going to be the price, right? For example, if we're talking about watches, you can look at two different watches, and one is $1,000 and one is $10,000. Most people likely think the $10,000 watch is a better watch. Sometimes that's not even the case. It's
Yeah,
just,
it's
it's just,
true.
it's just, it's just a price point. Um, so I think going back to to the, to the topic of playing small ball or thinking small versus not, uh, I think a lot of that hinges on like the value of the business, but that value is perceived initially solely by the person who's starting the business
Mm.
and getting other people and then from the marketing and reviews and things like that, getting other people to believe you as well. And I think to that story I made earlier about Brock Purdy playing in your, kind of staying in your lane for time until you feel like you're ready to scale or go bigger is something that's totally valid, but you can't have that limited way of thinking small, just playing small. That's fine. I feel like I just went up on a tangent. Sorry about that.
Well, no, you're right. If you've been elected dog catcher, serve as dog catcher. But if you aspire to become president, don't let go of that. And don't think that it's worthless because you don't currently hold the office, right? Don't devalue yourself to justify your existence. That's, you talk about nature abhors a vacuum. Um,
Mhm.
so do we, right? That's like, and, and, um, this is a conversation that in case anybody's watching or listening and thinking, well, here's two guys who figured this out. No, the opposite. We're both going through that cycle of understanding. We have an idea of what we'd like to earn, but we don't necessarily understand how to compute that. I was having this conversation. In fact, my financial advisor is a member of my mastermind, and he and I were having that conversation. We're going to have some more conversations about it. I've talked with Jason about this too. I said, I understand the value of what I do to my client, right? I understand how to illustrate that. If Jason and I put together a best-selling book, soup to nuts, take you from unknown to known, you know, over the life cycle of how we work with a client, then and from that, right, you land $1 million in new revenue, and you only paid $100,000 or $75,000 for us to do all that work on your behalf, and the rest of it is you showing up at speaking engagements and podcasts and promoting the book. Well, you can see the ROI is very good there numerically, right? Not to mention your influence goes way up. A whole bunch more people know who you are. You get a ton of feedback. You might even not to know what to do with it all. So I can justify that to the client. The question is, can I justify? The question is now, how do I know what it's worth to me? Right? If I don't have this with a lot of clients, but I do have it with some. Will say to me, I specifically want you to write the book because I've seen your writing,
Mm.
and it's the gift God gave me. It's great. That represents a different investment of my time than simply selling the strategy, and overseeing the project. And so I have to be careful in saying, well, I can't. Gone are the days where I could just pull a number out of my hat. I really got to know
Mm.
what that's worth, and I really have to have a formula, not a formula, but a guidance and the right kind of questions that both establish that value in a way that it can continue to increase. But by the same token, I'm not being outrageous, right? I'm not saying, well, it'll cost you $1 million for me to even look at your book. That's absurd.
Mhm.
Um, although there's probably some people out there who do that now, but
Hey.
they've been at it a lot longer than I have. I want to. We're down to the last quarter of the episode here, and I want to share what this has looked like for me. So these are three. I call this three ways you can tell you're playing small or thinking small, right? And if you have stuff to add to this, all the better. But um, the first thing that happens to a guy like me is I become emotionally unavailable. I become kind of like Spock, right? I'm there. My eyes are open, my ears are open. I'm listening. I'm interacting, but I'm not there, right? I'm not bonding or connecting with the people I'm speaking to. This is one of the things Jason pointed out. Is just you're reserved. I can't. I can hear you. I can see you, but I can't feel you.
Sure.
Um. So if you're like, you know, if you're coming across maybe like, kind of professorial, like you have head knowledge, but your audience doesn't really identify with you. Your avatar is polite, but there's a distance. They don't feel warm. They don't feel your warmth. They don't. Um, they don't get you. I think that's a sign. It could be a sign. It's not always a sign, but I think it certainly was for me. It's certainly something that I've been consciously pushing back at the best way I know how. And I think that it's a combination of being vulnerable and seeing value in my stories, opening up and sharing them, talking about them the way that I do, and people either get it or they don't. I really don't care, right? It's nice if
Mhm.
they do. Sorry if you don't. Move on to the next person. Um, so that's my first one. The first sign that I am thinking small is I'm emotionally unavailable.
Okay.
Second one is I'm inclined to focus on surface level things.
Mm.
And I don't mean I'm like shallow and, um, valley girl type of, I'm trying to get people to pay attention to me on the idea of build a better mousetrap, which is stupid.
Okay.
So I'm
So
talking
kind of like treating the symptoms.
correct. When Jason and when I was sharing that keynote idea with Jason, I was focused on the importance of editing. And the problem is that there's millions of editors out there who could say the same thing. I'm not differentiating myself, right? I'm focused on the superficial service that I provide and looking at it from a very academic and um, logic cold, indifferent level, telling the story of why I've become such an astute editor,
Mhm.
what happened in my background that is brought to bear every time someone asks me, will you fix this? Will you edit this? Will you build this? Um, and without the why, or what are we left with? The what? But the what is at that point is a commodity, and then it's not going to sell. Um, And so that's the second one, right? I'm more focused on what I do versus who I am and why. And when it's all about what you do, or this product, this product, this product, and there's no accompanying why or or emphasis on who you are, people are back to Jason's famous question: why should I care? So that's number two, and then number three is inertia. Inertia. I have something to I scribbled down this phrase. I have something to offer, but I'm not going to offer it until it's 100% safe to do so.
Mm-hmm. You're
Bad,
never going to operate.
bad idea.
Or you'll never, I think that type of thinking, it's like you're never going to offer your product then, or, um, you're never going to offer your product with confidence.
Mhm.
And that's in my opinion, that's even worse. It's like you go through the trouble of even putting everything together,
Yeah.
and then you go out there and you have this product that's probably amazing. But if you don't believe in it, then who else will? Let's just be honest.
Hmm. Oh yeah, that's age old wisdom right there, right? Um, here's my product that I don't believe in. You should buy it. Well, I don't want to buy it. Okay, you can have it for free. I still don't want it. Well, then what's the point of that? What's the point of even having the product if that's the way it's going to go?
Exactly.
You may as well just be the consumer, right?
Most
And
people are.
yeah, you're right. Most people are. But this is not a show for consumers. This is a show for producers. And what we're right. So we actually had that right with this that first story I told about the guy in my mastermind group, and and I won't go into too much detail here for obvious. This is private. But it took a couple of us pulling out our credit cards and slapping them on the table and said, "Why won't you help me? I need what you have. I need what you know. I need your perspective. You took this part of life and you excelled at it. Why won't you share it with me? Just because you have to ask for money. It's not a good reason. It's a disservice, right?"
Hmm.
And so we sit there thinking, well, I got to get it perfect. No, you don't have to get it perfect. You do need an MVP, right? Minimum valuable product. Yeah, absolutely. Of course. But once you got that, you got to run with it. And yeah, again, it goes back to that fear of being judged. Well, what if people don't like it? Screw them. You got people who like it, focus on them, ignore everybody else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the people who really care but don't buy will give you the feedback and tell you, well, I would have bought it, but here's the problem I have with it. Okay, great. I'll go do that. I'll fix it. And then you can give it to them for free. Right. That's when it's like you get somebody who gives you honest feedback. This is why I didn't buy it. Okay. I've changed that. Here's one on the house. Let me know what you think of it. That's when I would do it. Like nowadays, like if people come to me, will you help me for free? No, no.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, such a, it was such a beautiful moment of friendship and brotherhood on one level, but at the core of it is exactly what you're pointing out there, which is that you have got to have confidence that what you know was worth the price you paid to get it, or that what you've made, the product that you've made, um, you didn't just pull it out of a hat, right? Like I think of your product, right? Okay, you're not selling a thought leadership brand or anything. You're selling a product, but it's not a product that you just said, well, maybe I'll just invent this and, you know, off we go, lickety split. No, you invested time, you invested energy, you invested resources, you spent time researching and thinking about and angling and saying, who's the market? Who's this for? Right. And all of that has a dollar sign attached to it. We just don't know what it is.
Right.
And the uncertainty creates the hesitancy. So I think it's worth throughout the life cycle of your business, um, getting yourself around people who can help you evaluate what that product is worth, who have gone through the struggle themselves of being uncertain of what to charge. And so if you're uncertain of what to charge, right, you tend to gravitate towards one extreme or the other. You charge absurdly high that no one will pay, or you charge next to nothing that no everybody's like, well, that's not worth it. That's not enough. Like if it's that cheap, I can tell it's not going to help me.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's my thoughts.
No,
We got a few minutes left. Rye, you got the floor. What do you got
well,
to say?
I agree with you in saying that as an entrepreneur and whatever anyone is selling, um, there has to be an intrinsic value. And I also think that at the same time, like what you're feeling when you feel those 3 points that you described about playing, about thinking small or playing small are different for everybody. And I think what you described is what happens to you when you feel like you're in that place.
Hmm.
I think for me, it's a little bit different. I think I get a little, I get some weird anxiety and then, on top of that, like my mood changes. I'm feeling like limited, for example. Um, so I think those are all valid points. And I think in your story, I think the most important point you made about mitigating that type of feeling, and this is something that I'm beginning to like inherent, like very much believe, deeply believe, is that you have to surround yourself with people that can help kind of get you over that hump, or that will listen to you, or help, or maybe even point out a blind spot that you may not be seeing. You need some sort of support, whether that's a mentor or a mastermind group or boot camp, or just, even someone that, that can even like give you good feedback or something. You just need to be around people, because a lot of what you're saying for that entrepreneur that's by themselves working in a silo, if I was that entrepreneur and I didn't have any sort of support group or anyone to look to when I'm feeling certain types of ways, I'd probably quit. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people.
Sure
And
does.
I think, I think what you're describing is what is some of the symptoms that happen when people feel uh, in that way. But I definitely think that like being in a group or having someone to look towards or work with or what have you is one of the best ways in which you can mitigate those feelings. Because that
Hmm.
person or those people can help you kind of guide your ship in a way that's um, in a better direction. Yeah. So I think all that's really important. And I think this is a really great topic. So thank you for bringing it up.
My pleasure. And I would say that you're hitting the nail on the head. And one little modification I would add to that, I think there's probably people. I know a lot of people. Not a lot of them are very helpful. Exactly. So
Hmm.
I was reflecting on my personal values this morning, and I added one. It just came to me. Like, and you don't add to the. I mean, you can add to me, subtract from for that. But I don't do this every day, right? But this one, I said, I see such a difference in my life when I do this right that it's got to be a value for me. And the phrase that I came up with was interdependence with the right people. So, you can have friendships that are just, we just enjoy each other's company. But not
Hmm.
every one of those will necessarily lead to this person sharpens me in addition to being a good friend.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely think you need friends for the situation, if you will.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's, Jason is like that for you and I. Like he sharpens us, right? And I
Mhm.
think he would probably say we do the same thing for him. But
Yeah,
um, but there's other people, right? And you can also have people who sharpen you who are not particularly friendly, you know, but they're just really good at challenging you. Don't ignore those people either.
absolutely.
Um, so, but if I were to tell an entrepreneur of a value that I would recommend you have, it's interdependence with the right people. Um, Understanding how to segment your social circles and saying, if I want correction or perspective that tells me, Edwards, you're thinking small again, these people are who I need to talk to. These people over
Absolutely.
here, they're wonderful. They're cheerleaders. They support me. They love me. They think that I'm just the bee's knees. Okay, when I want to rally because you know, I'm I'm feeling a little
Looking
down
at
about myself, I'll go to them. But if I'm thinking and doing something and I'm like, I got to have my stupid alarm go off because I'm good at doing stupid. I got to go talk to these guys over here.
Mhm.
So there we go. Um, Last words for the good of the order from you, Rye. Anything noteworthy or pressing to throw on the
No, I
pot?
think I just to kind of like reemphasize, I think that's the whole reason why we're all here together. Like you, Naomi, Jason, myself, along with everyone else who's joined Thinker Growth uh, up until this point. I think we're all here just to be able to have those people around us, and I think that's a really good step in the right direction. So for those people who watch clips of this or watch this entire show, just know that, as faculty members, we're here for them to talk to kind of bounce ideas off of, paying it forward, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So that's the time we have for this week's episode of the Thinker Growth Community Workshop podcast and video podcast, and wherever else you consume your information on. Go to thinkergrowth.com. We'd be delighted to have you join our community and looking forward to reconvening next week. Rye, you have yourself a great week, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon, my friend.
See you later, Paul. Thanks again.
Bye.